The Cleveland Browns travel to Indianapolis Sunday, trying to parlay the huge win against San Francisco in a 2-game winning streak. We're going to break it all down on Crossover Thursday. Browns, Colts Sunday in Indianapolis.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I am Zach Hicks, your guys' resident film nerd here over at Locked On Colts, working with horseshoehuddle.com. And I'm joined today by my buddy Jeff Lloyd over on Locked On Browns. Does a fantastic job covering that team coming off just a huge win this past week with the Browns versus the 49ers. So today we're going to talk about our thoughts on this upcoming matchup, the biggest local story for both teams, the biggest matchup in this game, and who we both think will come out on top. So Jeff, I'm going to kick it over to you when it comes to the biggest local story. I know you guys are kind of buzzing when it comes to this big, huge win that you guys had with your backup quarterback against one of the best teams in all of football. So what's the biggest local story for the Browns heading into this matchup with the Colts?
Well, first things first, Browns fans, I've missed you. I told you guys, obviously a move and some Wi-Fi issues. We're temporarily relocated, but we are back to business. So we got the post-game show win, but it's just a crazy, game, obviously, in the way things went down. It was Browns' 5th game of the season, 3rd starting quarterback through 5 games. You get a miraculous effort from your defense. Obviously, as hard as they played, they do get a little luck at the end, obviously, with the Moody field goal going to the right. Hey, anybody in the NFL is going to take it. Nobody's giving them back, of course. But over the last couple of days, obviously, it's just been the confidence level of this team, because the crucial part of this entire 5-game stretch for the Browns was the difficulty. And then things were going to ease up. You played your first 3 conference games against Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and of course, Baltimore, Tennessee, and then, of course, San Francisco. The goal, obviously, was to have a winning record through 6 weeks, 5 games. Browns have already had their bye. They've reached that point, obviously. At this point, we thought we were going to start talking about some rookie quarterbacks, certainly AFC South rookie quarterbacks. And unfortunately, for you guys with the Colts, Anthony Richardson, it's, over quickly. For the Houston Texans, Browns will see them down the line, but these are starting to look like more and more winnable games. We had a good couple of days as far as, starting to feel better about ourselves. And then now the word comes in again. And it seems it's weird with Deshaun Watson, because every time somebody talks about Deshaun Watson's injury, it seems to get like another thing added to it. At first it was this, and then it was this. It was a bruise, and it was a contusion, then it was a rotator. And, maybe there's like a micro tear. And I got to be honest, I don't have the medical degree to talk to any people, intelligently enough about all of this. He did not practice today. And it's hard to believe if he didn't do anything today, all of a sudden he's going to be out on the field Thursday and Friday to the point where he's ready to go. But the Browns, and this is one thing that they have always done during the Stefanski and Barry regime, is they've been extremely cautious. Like, not many people go through a practice week without practicing and still play games. Is there still an outside chance he could play? Possibly. But I do think the way this team is playing right now, and obviously a significant loss just suffered yesterday by the Indianapolis Colts, which the Browns, who got their running game back on track last week, and now maybe it looks a little more favorable this week. But for right now, we're not talking about Deshaun Watson. We're talking about the Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Browns right now, but they're a team. They're playing football like a team, and it's been a really good thing. But obviously, this defense has just been absolutely lights out. There's not enough superlatives you can use when you're talking about what Jim Schwartz and this group has done. Andrew Berry heavily invested in the group. Jim Schwartz has obviously taken the reins in this group, and they have been absolutely sensational. 53 first downs allowed through 5 games, which is just an astronomical number.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing for me too, is talking about that Browns defense. Is the biggest local story right now for the Colts really is, can Gardner Minshew get back on track against just the best defense in football. I mean, right now the Cleveland Browns are the best defense in football. They have the best pass rusher in football. They have a really great secondary, and they have one of the best defensive play callers in Jim Schwartz, like you just mentioned there, Jeff. Now we're coming off a game with the Colts where they lost 37-20 in a big interdivisional rivalry with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think when you look at that final score, it looks like the Colts got just blown out. Like it was not even this close of a game. And I'm not saying it was a close game by any means, but when you're watching this game, the Colts defense played well. Their offensive line, for the most part, was fine. Their pass catchers were fine. The big issue was backup quarterback Gardner Minshew just played like his brain was, turned to mush for half the game. He didn't know what he was doing out there for most of that game. He threw a lot of really bad picks. I mean, he threw 3 interceptions. It could have easily been 6 or 7 that really should not have been thrown. That's the end of the day. That's what happened in this past game. I'm not saying the Colts win this game with Anthony Richardson, but with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, it's a close game. It's a much closer game than what it ended up being. But that's the reality of our situation here in Indy, just like you guys are facing there in Cleveland with your backup quarterback situation. But getting to this game, we're talking about the biggest story. It's like, look, the Colts team played fairly well last week, but can Gardner Minshew get back to playing like Gardner Minshew of his career? I mean, Gardner Minshew in his career is a 2-to-1 touchdown interception guy. He's a guy who doesn't turn the ball over much, a guy who can manage the game and keep your offense on track. Will he be that guy this week against a really, really good Cleveland Browns defense? Or will he be Gardner Minshew of last week where, when in doubt, I'm going to throw it in quadruple coverage off my back foot and let defenses just feast on me here? Because if that quarterback comes out against the Cleveland Browns, the Colts might not score a point this week, because the Cleveland Browns defense, for as good as the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is, the Cleveland Browns defense is another step up from that.
It's, and this is the thing though, it's tough though. And we went through it obviously when DTR started his first game. And you can talk about all the superlatives from pulling off that great victory on Sunday. PJ Walker had a couple of big throws, but PJ Walker also looked every drip of what is a number 2 quarterback, possibly a number 3 quarterback in the NFL. And it's tough for any team. And, and it drives me nuts when fans and people try to critique a team when the team is out there playing with either a second string quarterback, a third string quarterback. It's like, this ain't the plan, man. I can't believe they didn't call the game plan right. And, we went through it, people wanted to get on Kevin Stefanski after the Ravens game. Well, I can't believe the game plan they called for DTR. They do it 10:30 Sunday morning. Well, what are you supposed to go do? You're supposed to gather all your coaches, all your players, break out. So, you know what? We need to watch the film. No, man, that's the position you're in at that point. And why didn't you run the ball more? Well, the Baltimore Ravens stopped the run. Why did you throw so much? I mean, in granted, the NFL now is 17 games. So NFL teams understand, hey, it's probably not going to be our day. And it shouldn't matter at the end because we still got 16 more of these. You know what I'm saying? You get one basically, rubber coming off your rim kind of game where it just doesn't work out for you. Obviously, case in point, there are no, undefeated teams in the NFL to this point.
Yep.
It is a league that has, a lot of balance. And as cliche as it seems to say, yes, almost anybody can beat anybody on any given day. But, for Colts, obviously, hope brighter days are ahead for, with Anthony Richardson next season. For the Browns, they would like to get Deshaun Watson here, because as much as critique as Deshaun Watson is taking, Deshaun Watson, the last time he played a game for the Cleveland Browns, was the best game he played for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. Yep. Now, coming up, guys, we're going to talk about the biggest matchups in this upcoming game. Can the Colts actually contain the just one-man wrecking ball that is Myles Garrett? We're going to talk about that here in just a second.
Bird dogs make you look good. Bird dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts. They are made of a stiff, restracting cotton. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry and all day long. Bird Dogs are functional for any occasion: golf date, evening out, pool, workout, lounging, work. One of the greatest things that I like about Bird Dogs is you can judge fashion today. I have teenagers. So guess what? When the joggers come in, when the shorts come in, I go to take them out of laundry. I can't find them, which means they've been absconded. So if the product is good, if it is working with the teenagers of today. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or enter promo code LockedOnNFL at a checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you.
All right, guys, so we're jumping into the biggest matchups for this upcoming game. And I'm going to start off with Indy here real quick, Jeff, and then I'll kick it over to you. But you kind of alluded to it in our first topic that we're talking about. The Colts had just a major loss this week, losing Grover Stewart for the next 6 weeks due to a suspension for performance-enhancing drugs. Grover Stewart, one of the best overall nose tackles in all of football, just a fantastic player. And to lose him against a team that finally found their groove again running the football. I know they don't have Nick Chubb, but last week they finally were able to run the ball really well, and they have one of the best run designs in the league, a really good run blocking offensive line. So to lose Grover Stewart for this matchup, I think that is such a big matchup because you guys saw last year, Taven Bryan was with you guys. Do you think Taven Bryan can defend the run against the Cleveland Browns offensive line? Because personally, I'm not too optimistic about that, but I want to hear your thoughts on Taven Bryan potentially being the guy stepping up after everything you saw from him last year.
Well, first things first, let's not disrespect Taven Bryan. He was second on the Cleveland Browns last year in sacks. So that tells you how poor
the Cleveland Browns. Look, he's not a bad player. He's not a bad player.
He's not a starting
not
defensive
a good run
tackle.
defense. Yeah,
he's a rotation. He's a rotation. Nickel and dime. He's fine. You cannot. And the Browns saw this firsthand last year. But look, none of us are the Jacksonville Jaguars who spent a first round pick on him. So let's enjoy that part of it as well.
That's true.
But the defense itself, it's the thing is when you had a player like Myles Garrett ilk, and the way it worked out, you went out, you obviously signed Ogbonnaya Okoronkwo. Then they went through the draft process, and they drafted Isaiah McGuire. They had Alex Wright, and Alex Wright was such an interesting eval 2 years ago. Everybody saw him at UAB, kind of loved everything about him. He was a guy that played inside. He was a guy that played outside. And we all thought he was a great athlete. We never really got to see any athletic testing. So we basically had to say, we think he's a great athlete, but we have no proof to prove that he's a great athlete. He's really improved this year. But you get through the draft process. So not only did you add one starting defensive end, you called your buddy Kwesi up in Minnesota and said, well, hey, if it's not going to work out, we can find a, spot there for Smith. So you acquired two starting defensive ends. You already had Myles Garrett. And you went out and acquired two starting defensive ends. So Myles is basically allowed to do whatever he wants now. And this was Myles in his early part of the career. Greg Williams was really good with this. Like, well, why, and even Greg Williams, people laughed. I don't care if he learns any other moves. Why? Because his first move is that good. I don't care if he has a B or option or C. But now, getting back to lining him up all over the place, you still go back to week one. Obviously, whatever he was doing, dribbling in, taking a guy one-on-one. Myles is just having fun now because he truly just gets to rely on his athleticism. But you're creating one-on-ones for Zadarius Smith, Ogbonnaya Okoronkwo, Dalvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, and Alex Wright. So many of these other guys, and these guys win more often than they lose. So even Myles, who had a really strong drive to close it out, he didn't really have a statistical output Sunday against the San Francisco 49ers. And the Browns still pretty much dominated them from the defensive side of the ball. You match that with a secondary that plays coverage very well. And even when Jim Schwartz got here, they asked, what's your plan? And he's like, well, until I see I have to do something else other than man, we'll talk about it. Because that's how much faith he had in these guys. JOK is finally he's playing. This is all what we thought JOK was going to be. But he was always going to be a linebacker that was going to be really good if he wasn't getting touched. And last year, every linebacker on the Cleveland Browns was getting touched, and to the tune of 200 plus yards a game in the running game. And everybody thought, it's the play. That it wasn't the players, it was the system, man. Your linebackers are getting touched 7-8 yards down the field. That's not on them. But it's all just really coming together. And I think what makes this really special and really possible for a nice run here for over the next, probably a couple of weeks, month, is that they have this confidence level now. They know. I mean, in the Niner game was the difference. It really was, because it was like, everybody, and what Brock 30, as the guys that Locked On 49ers like to call him, for, because he starts as 30 points. It really showed, and it really proved to them that, hey, we are this good, and we deserve to be mentioned as the number one defense in the league. And, for me, the former wide receiver, I'd rather talk offense. But as good as this has been, it's just incredible to watch, because they are a really good unit.
Yeah. And I think, we can obviously say this about every NFL game going into a game. Well, maybe not everyone, because there's teams like the Dolphins. But I think in particular with this game, because it's two backup quarterbacks, it's two offenses that, they haven't been great this year. They've had good moments, but for the most part, these two offenses that we're talking about have not been fantastic, but it's mostly been the defenses kind of carrying the load, especially with your guys, case there in Cleveland. I think what ultimately wins this game is whichever team wins the trench battle. If the Colts come out and their offensive line is able to I don't want to say blank the Cleveland Browns because I don't know if you can do that with who they have at pass rusher, but at least contain the Cleveland Browns pass rush and they're able to run the ball fairly effectively, then the Colts offense will probably do enough to win this game. But on the inverse side, if the Colts defensive line can't stop the run and if Myles Garrett does Myles Garrett things, then obviously the Cleveland Browns have a good chance at having a pretty big victory here. But I think this is one of those games where when you factor in the 2 backup quarterbacks potentially starting in this game, it really comes down to trench play. Like whoever wins in the trenches in this game is going to win this game because I expect this to kind of be like a sloppy, lower scoring game with these backup quarterbacks out there.
Yeah, and the Browns last week, obviously, the streak ended for Joel Bitonio. Michael Dunn stepped in, played well for him. Michael Dunn obviously finished the game, but he was so injured finishing the game. He actually went on an IR. Good news is Joel Bitonio was back on the practice field today for the Cleveland Browns. So Michael Dunn, thank you for the effort, but obviously Joel Bitonio, if he's ready to go, he's good to go. And it's even kind of funny because Joel Bitonio doesn't normally take a practice field on Wednesday anyway. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he was out there on a Wednesday seems to be a positive sign as far as him possibly being ready to go here. And I do agree with you. And that was the key for the Browns. They didn't run great last week. And Jerome Ford in the first half, it was, there was some, like the way it was like, you got to go north and south, kid. You know what I'm saying? Like you ain't going east and west here in the NFL. And obviously that message was sent to Jerome Ford in the second half. And all of a sudden those, 2 and 3 yard runs were becoming 4, 5, and 6. The 8 yard run was becoming a 9, 10, 11 yard run. And to play like he did, I think it was 17 carries, 84 yards against San Francisco 49ers. That's a confidence booster, man. You're not going to see many defenses like the San Francisco 49ers. And I got to say it because I never say this. Jedrick Wills actually played well. And I never say this about Jedrick Wills because normally I can't talk about Jedrick Wills because it's, the old adage of your mom says, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. But Jedrick Wills had his best game in quite some time for the Browns. DeJuan Jones has been fantastic. Nick Bosa Nick Bosa was tired. He was done with DeJuan Jones by the end of the day because he was just getting beat on by a 6'9", 350-pound man. And I don't blame Nick Bosa, certainly. But yeah, this is huge because, I can't say, oh, well, PJ Walker's going to go out there and throw for 275 and 3 touchdowns. I have no faith in that. But I do have faith that the Browns offensive line is going to give him the time to hopefully make plays. And the Browns, this is one thing we were all starting to think about as far as improvement on this team. The offensive line hadn't played up to the standards that we have been used to here the last couple of years. And last week they put out a good showing here. And if they can get that going, that's going to be key for them down the stretch. And it'll be even a key more when Deshaun Watson comes back. Because when he does get back, obviously there's going to be some rust because of the time missed. And there's going to be, probably, a re-engaging process with Deshaun as he gets back into this, because now you got skill guys that have now seen 3 different quarterbacks this early in the season. You kind of got to get back into sync with Deshaun. So if you can lead with the offensive line, and, this was never supposed to be the plan this year because it was supposed to be Deshaun's team. It was supposed to be Deshaun's arm that was supposed to do everything. But, sometimes, the plan gets broken and you have no choice. And that's kind of where the Browns are at. But if this defense does what it does, the offense has just got to find a way to go out there and put up, 20, 21 points week in, week out, and they should win a heck of a lot more than they should lose.
Yep, definitely. Completely agree there. Now, coming up, guys, we're going to talk about our final predictions for this game. Do we think the Colts have a chance against the Cleveland Browns? We're going to talk about that here in just a second. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 back in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that include spreads, player props, over-unders. I know I'm going to be hitting the under on this upcoming game with the Colts and Browns. I'm going to FanDuel right now, right after we're done recording this, and hitting the under on this game. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off your NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And guys, the Jase case is a professional emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. With the state of the world right now, guys, you cannot be without this kind of stuff going out there. I know Jeff has kids. He likes to have that for his kids out there. Even me, I don't have kids, but I just need to keep it for myself because you just never know what you're going to run into when you're out and about. It could be anything from something minor to something major. You want to have some medication on you just in case you get hit with the worst of it. We had a whole lockdown a couple years ago, so obviously you want to be on top of everything that you can be. Jase Medical now offers customability for your Jase case with dozens of add-on medications. Choose the medications that best fit you and your family's unique needs, and Jase is continually working to extend their medication offerings. Go to jasemedical.com and enter code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com. All right, Jeff, so I'm going to kick it back over to you to kick off this final segment here. What do the Browns need to do? Like, what needs to go right for this Browns team if they want to win this game in Indy against the Colts?
Well, and I'm not using the word trap game, but the thing is the celebration over, guys? I mean, look, beating the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday was fantastic. But as great as that game was, the possibility of losing this game would do 10 times more damage than that win did. You were not expected to win the game, but you did. But when you were expected to win a game, but you don't, and that'll bring back all the negativity. It'll bring back everybody who wants to start pointing the finger. There are some favorable matchups in the AFC North this week that do favor the possibility of the Browns possibly being tied or being solo in first place this week, because the Ravens could end up 4-3. The Steelers could end up 3-3. The Browns have an opportunity to be 4-2 at the end of this weekend. They could possibly be alone in first place right now as the Cincinnati Bengals remain idle. So this has been something for years now with this team, as they, have tried to teeter towards, being a good team. You got to rip them off in a row. And, when you have a win like you did last week, and you're going to come in here and, I guess we can't really call Gardner Minshew the backup quarterback anymore, because he's now the starting quarterback, obviously, from here on out. You are going to see a couple of decent running backs in Zach Moss, and obviously each week, Jonathan Taylor's getting more and more amped up, more and more involved in the Colts offense here. So you have to be ready for that. Granted, the Browns have been fantastic against the run this year. Very, very physical and things. I always love just the simplicity of it. Players on the edge, forcing the play inside. It goes back to any level of football. But for years, I saw so many guys take a toss, take a handoff, and just freely make their way outside, get to the numbers, and be able to light up this defense. And it's things that just don't happen here anymore. And it's probably all because, as much as they love Jim Schwartz, I think they're also scared to death of Jim Schwartz. As far as, hey, there's enough. And the thing is there's a legit threat, because the defensive roster is deep. So if you make a goof, there's plenty of guys, they don't have a problem throwing out there on the field and let somebody else go make the plays, So there is that fear of, hey, I'm not guaranteed anything. This team plays 5 defensive ends. This team has 4 defensive tackles. This team has 5 linebackers, all who can play. But so the key is to basically just go out there and be who you are. If most likely it's going to be PJ Walker. We don't need you to throw for 300 yards. Some timely big plays here and there, like they had to Amari Cooper last week, is fine. There were 2 big plays last week, screen plays to David Njoku that went for big yardage. Obviously, both were negated by penalties. One was about a 35-yard touchdown. The other one was about a 17-yard screen later in the game. Just execute what is there to be had. And the one thing that PJ Walker almost took everything away from the Browns last week is it's okay to run, or it's okay to throw the ball to your mom in the 17th row. You don't have to throw every pass. And there were a couple of balls PJ Walker threw last week that certainly had you cringing. But just go out there, and now you're a confident team. Play like a confident team.
Yep. And I think the biggest thing with the Colts here is, the Browns want to play that way that you just said. They want to play like your confident team. For the Colts, make it ugly. Make it the ugliest game that has ever happened.
Exactly what Cleveland did last week.
Exactly. Make it as ugly as that Ravens win that the Colts had early in the season, where they had Gardner Minshew as their starting quarterback. They went to Baltimore and they beat Baltimore by making it this disgusting, ugly game. Don't turn the ball over on offense. Don't give them short fields. Don't give them easy touchdowns, because last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's exactly what the Colts did. They kept giving the Jaguars short fields. They kept giving them easy opportunities to get points. And as a result, the Jaguars offense had 250 yards of offense, but 37 points. That's not because your defense was getting beat. It's because your offense was beating themselves. Now do that to the Cleveland Browns. If you want to beat the Cleveland Browns, who are coming on the road to your stadium, make it ugly. Don't turn the ball over. Make sure a majority of your offensive plays are at least going for positive yards. Don't beat yourself with big sacks or beat yourself with really bad turnovers. And then on defense, just keep them out of the end zone. If you're making PJ Walker have to go up and down the field on you on 15 play drives, He can't do that. He's just not that kind. He's a backup quarterback. If you keep taking away the deep ball, make him have to eat everything short, and then make it tougher in the red zone for him, he's not that type of quarterback who's going to be precise and just kill you for a ton of points in the red zone. So don't give him anything easy. Don't give them, wide open leak plays or wide open screen plays or anything like that. Make every yard difficult, make everything ugly in this game, and make it so this ends up being a game of attrition, a game of field goals, a game of not turning the ball over, because that's your chance at beating the Cleveland Browns. You're not going to put up 50 points on them. You're not going to put up 40. You're not going to put up 30. You might not even put up 20 on the Cleveland Browns. But if you can hold them down to wherever you're going to end up with your offense in this game, then you have a chance at winning this one. So really for the Indianapolis Colts, it's, look, you're the underdog in this game. You're playing against a team that is red hot coming off their biggest win of the season. Make it ugly. Make it a game that their fans are disappointed in afterwards, saying like, oh my gosh, we committed this many penalties. We turned the ball over this many times. We couldn't get off the field here. Make it one of those games for the Cleveland Browns if you want to have the chance to win. And Jeff, I'm going to kick it back to you here. What's your final score prediction now that we've kind of talked out this big matchup between the Colts and Browns?
If this game goes the way it should for the Cleveland Browns, you're probably talking, I would say something like, 23-13, somewhere in that range. And as far as ugly, so that would be 3 field goals for the Browns. That would obviously be, maybe 2 field goals for the Indianapolis Colts. Like 23-13 feels about right. I know there's a lot of Browns fans that think there's like, a 30 burger coming here, but like you were just saying, I have a hard time believing this team can drop 30 on anybody right now with PJ Walker being the quarterback.
Right.
And it's obviously just not really the way their offense is basically designed to do here. But 23-13, I think, could it be a little bit closer? Could it be a little bit, heftier? It would all depend, of course, on Minshew. It could all depend possibly on, PJ Walker, who makes, the least amount of mistakes. So that's certainly something to think about there. But, for me, I think Browns, as long as they play like they're capable of, they should be able to shut down the Colts offense. And, I don't think, PJ Walker is going to play as reckless this week as he did last week. And granted, the Colts defense isn't necessarily a San Francisco 49ers defense either.
Yeah. I think this is going to be an ugly one, like I mentioned, but I do think the Browns come out on top just because, again, when you have a defense like that, it covers up so many mistakes. It covers up so much. So even if the Browns offense turns the ball over a little bit more than the Colts offense does, when you have a defense that is so aggressive and so attacking like that one, it is just tough to move the ball on them. I think I'm going to go with 16-12, just an ugly, ugly score. A lot of field goals in this one. It's going to be a ton of field goals. The Colts probably knock through 4 55-plus yard field goals because that's what we do with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Matt Gay just keeps kicking all these 50-yard field goals.
Becomes Reggie Miller.
Yeah, he does. He does. Yeah, but I'm going to go 16-12 Cleveland in this one. I do think Indy just really exchanges blows with them for a majority of the game. But ultimately, again, the Browns just have a little bit more talent, especially on defense right now. But I do think it's going to be an ugly one. So you guys let us know in the comment section below.
One sec. And just one thing. If anything were to happen, Minshew gets pulled, Minshew gets hurt, who's next in line?
Oh, it's Sam Ehlinger, man. It's Sam Ehlinger.
Okay.
Slinging Sammy. Slinging Sammy.
Little Texas, baby.
Yep, exactly. Slinging Sammy might lead us to victory if it comes down to it. But everydayers, again, let us know in the comment section, who do you think wins this game? Do you think the Colts could win an ugly one, or is this going to be all Browns? You guys let us know in the comment section there. If you don't already, follow us on social medias at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2, and at Jeff LJ Lloyd over there for all your Cleveland coverage. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your guys' podcasts. We'd love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll see you guys back here bright and early tomorrow morning.